Good morning. I'm your English teacher Uldash Vasilvaran. Today's our new topic is discourse markers. So, in this lesson we will speak about discourse markers. A discourse markers is a word or phrase used in a conversation to signal the speaker's intention to mark a boundary. Anyway, I'll have to be going now. Types of discourse markers depending on the purpose and relationship of ideas you are trying to express. Depending on the purpose and relationship of the ideas, discourse markers divided into such kind of groups. Time sequence markers, addition and contrast markers, contrast, deduction, example, addition, summation markers, cause and effect markers. Time sequence markers. So here is given some example for time sequence markers. Time markers. They are before, since, as, until, meanwhile, at the moment, when, as soon as, just as. Sequence markers. Firstly, initially, to begin with, then, next, earlier, later. Addition markers. And, in addition, further, also, both, also, moreover, besides. Contrast markers. However, but, so, on the other hand, also, while. Addition markers. He likes watching movies. He enjoys listening to music. Now we will bind these two sentences with the help of the discourse markers. He likes watching movies and listening to music. Contrast markers. He did not agree. He went along with the plan. Also, he didn't agree. He went along with the plan. So, contrast, deduction, example, addition, summation markers connect sentences which add information or give reasons to support a point. So here is given some types of discourse markers. Add information. For example, and, in addition, as well as. Contrast, but, whereas, however. Summarize, conclude. To summarize, in conclusion. Reason, result. For example, therefore, thus, because. Examples. For example, such as, for instance. Cause and effect markers. There was a traffic jam. I was late. There was a traffic jam, so I was late. So, but, because, if. The reason, they are the sample for cause and effect markers. Now we will watch a video about identification of discourse markers. Let's watch this video about discourse markers.
We will be discussing the definition of discourse markers in speech and writing, different categories of common discourse markers, replacing discourse markers, and linking paragraphs to discourse markers. So sit back, relax, and make sure you're taking notes because we will be having a short seat work on our next meeting. So what exactly is a discourse marker? Discourse markers are also known as linking words or linking phrases, or sentence connectors. They may be described as the glue that binds together a piece of writing, making the different parts of the text stick together. They also exist in the three macro skills: reading, writing, and speaking. Examples of discourse markers used in speech are, as I was saying, which means to bring the conversation back to a former point; anyway, which means to move on to another point or to close the conversation; and here's the thing, which means to raise an example. On the other hand, examples of discourse markers used in speech are, on the other hand, which is to move to an opposing viewpoint; in the case of, which means to introduce an example; and in addition to, which is to raise a new point or example. All of the discourse markers I've stated, as well as the other discourse markers, can be used in all of the three macro skills. Not one is limited to just being used in reading, writing, or speaking. There are different categories of discourse markers. Different discourse markers belong to different categories. These different categories have different ideas or purposes. We will be going over 6 different categories of common discourse markers, namely addition, contrast, concession, cause, condition, and result. Addition. The role of discourse markers under this category is to add something. Examples of discourse markers under this category are moreover, additionally, in addition, further, furthermore, also, and besides. Contrast. Discourse markers under the category contrast is to make a contrast between two separate things: ideas, people, and the like. Examples of discourse markers under this category are, however, on the other hand, in contrast, and yet. Concession. The role of discourse markers under this category is to make an unexpected contrast. Examples of discourse markers under this category are although, even though, despite the fact that, in spite of the fact that, and regardless of the fact that. Cause. Discourse markers under this category are used to say why something is the case. Examples of discourse markers under this category are because, since, as, and so far as. Condition. The role of discourse markers under this category is to express a condition. Examples of discourse markers under this category are if, in the event of, as long as, so long as, provided that, assuming that, given that. Lastly, result. Discourse markers under this category are used to state a result or effect. Examples of discourse markers under this category are therefore, consequently, in consequence, as a result, accordingly, hence, thus, for this reason, and because of this. In your writing, you will want to spend some time ensuring that your work has a sense of variety. In order to do this, you may use the following. Use conjunctions and omit discourse markers if necessary. A conjunction is used to join two ideas together into a complex sentence. Unlike discourse markers such as however, a conjunction cannot be used at the beginning of a sentence and must come at the midpoint, at the end of one clause, and the beginning of another. It is usually possible to rephrase a pair of sentences that use a sentence connector by using a conjunction instead. Knowing when to omit the discourse marker is a subtle aspect of language use and comes with a more practice and wider reading. Too many discourse markers will make the writing look pedantic, heavy, and over-pompous. Remember, you are ideally seeking a light with a flowing style, not a heavy or forced one. Just like words, phrases, and sentences, a new paragraph must be linked in some way with the previous one. We will be going over the 3 basic types of paragraph-paragraph relationships, namely reinforcement of ideas, contrast of ideas, and concession, whose roles are just the same as when connecting words, phrases, and sentences. Discourse markers for reinforcement are used to reinforce or support the idea in the first paragraph. Examples displaying reinforcement are in the sentences. A further example of this phenomenon can be seen in Foucault's work, or Jones further demonstrates this point in his most recent research. Discourse markers for contrast are used to contradict the idea in the first paragraph. Examples displaying contrast are in the sentences. Jones, meanwhile, or on the other hand, expresses this notion as self-defense, or this argument is not, however, accepted by all critics. For instance, Smith holds that discourse markers for concession are used to make acknowledgments. Examples displaying concession are in the sentences. Although the ideas of Jones are interesting and useful, they do not take account of the growing problems of identity theft. Or, while Roberts emphasizes the importance of Foucault's notion of the panoptic, on the opposite view is held by other commentators. For example, this concludes our discussion on identifying uncommon discourse markers. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have learned something.
So it is the end of our video lesson. If you have got any questions, you can easily contact me. And as a home task, you should do all the tasks on the Moodle platform and don't forget to submit it on time. So our lesson is over. Goodbye.